Reminded me of a moment of a story, but I'll try not to get over there. Mark chapter 1 is where I want to go this morning. Actually, we've just finished, or I say we finished. That's not fair to say we finished. But I came to an end, at least on the part where we talked about vision. And if you'll remember, we said the vision of the Destiny Center. That statement that we make, that the Destiny Center is a New Testament church impacting our community. And you go, well, that doesn't mean anything to me. I want it to mean something to you. Not because I wrote it, not because I came up with it, because we sat down and came and conceptualized it and visualized it and talked about it. And no, don't use this word. Let's use that word. No, let's use this, not that. Let's say, one of the things about saying New Testament is I love everything about the New Testament, but we can say full gospel. We say Pentecostal. We can say a lot of those things, but people run away from that. Oh, I'm scared of that. Well, let me tell you something. By the year 2025, statistics say that half of Christendom will be Pentecostal. But we'll just say New Testament. How's that? Same thing. Because everything that happens in the New Testament is who we are. And so a New Testament church impacting our community. And we've talked about a couple of different things and looked at a few things. And this morning, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, I put this over here. It doesn't really mean one thing to you right now. It's over the vision, because in order for us to get to the vision, we got to go through the process, because vision doesn't just happen. Vision takes work. Do you know when Jesus said to his disciples, "Follow me and I'll make you a fisher of men"? Do you realize what that took him? 3 years. Is somebody playing? Do I hear music? I do hear music. I'm like, what? Is it up here? I'm sorry. No, you're fine. Leave it alone. I'm like, am I getting something here that I'm not getting? And I am getting something here that, yeah, the angels are singing. Say, I'm sorry. Sean's like, oh no. Can you hear it too? Okay. All right. Well, see, it's my background music then. And when it stops, I'll stop. How long does it go? How many? Oh man, I got to hurry then. I was hoping you were going to say, "Oh, it goes for about 3 hours." So anyway, where was I? I was talking about, vision. We talk about the vision, and it takes work. It took Jesus work. In fact, it took him 3 years. It took his death. Do you realize that even though he taught them for those 3 years, at the end of those 3 years, if that was the end of it, he was a failure? Do you get that? They all left him. One of them killed himself. The other 11 ran away as well. And if that would have been the end of the story, Jesus' vision and everything would have died right there. But it took work, and that wasn't the end of it. Thank God that wasn't the end of it. You better thank God that wasn't the end of it, because that was the end of it. It would be the end of it for us as well. But it wasn't the end of it for them or for us. And so the vision takes work, it takes effort, it takes time, it takes blood, it takes sweat, it takes tears, it takes money, it takes talent, it takes leadership, it takes everything that you can anticipate. It takes all of that. Well, why is it so hard? Listen, the world does the exact same thing. That's why some of you will work 60 to 80 hours a week. And so, well, I can't go to church now. I'm just too tired. Well, why are you letting them rob you of everything? But God asked you for a little bit. Now, all right, I'll have to be careful, because you go, well, you're just a preacher. This is what you always do. This is not all. I'm not a preacher because of that's my vocation. I'm a follower of Christ first and foremost. And out of that, he called me. Jesus says, follow me. That was the first thing. Follow me. And then he gave them the most awesome job in the world. I'll make you a fisher of men. Do you know what it's like to lead people? How many have ever, I'm not any kind of cattleman or any of those kind of things. I married a country girl. I grew up in the city and all those things. I married a country girl. So, and when I say that, other than to say this, I don't know much, but I do know, at least from reading and watching and seeing different things, leading sheep is one of the most, sheep are dumb. Dumb. And they just are. And yet, well, how does the Word of God reference us as? Now, I'm not saying you're dumb, because y'all go to the Destiny Center, y'all got to be the smartest people on the planet. But the thing is when you're leading people, it's just like trying to lead sheep. There's always one that wants to run this way and run that way. And you're like, hey, I'm trying to help you out here. I'm trying to take you to the promised land. Meh. Was that a cow? That may have been a cow. Or a calf. And so Jesus had a vision for the disciples, but he had a vision for the church, not just for the disciples. The disciples are going to be the impetus. That was going to be the thing that would help perpetuate and push forward his kingdom. But it began, in a sense, in them. But in Mark 1:17, I've already quoted this. It says, follow me and I'll make you become fishers of men. And so this morning, I want to take a few moments and look at not only this passage, but look at what I'm just calling the process. If you're a sports fanatic like I am, and I'm going to tell you it's a curse. I promise you it's a curse. It's a curse. I'm throwing stuff at the TV yesterday. Well, not really. I'm wanting to throw stuff. I'm like, what in the world? Bring Charlie Strong back. Anyway, I'm sorry. Lord, help me. Help me right now in the midst of all this. But I'm a sports fanatic. And so I listen to what's going on with the Cowboys and all that stuff. And if you ever heard Jason Garrett, he goes, well, we have he talks about the process. How many have ever heard him Jason Garrett say, something about the process? You just heard the word, him say the process. Anybody? Man, y'all aren't sports fans at all. You're almost like Tom Brady or something. Anyway. No wonder y'all are not going to go to heaven. But anyway, that's a joke. That's not the truth. Has nothing to do with Tom. Has everything to do with Jesus. So I got to hurry because my music goes off in about 16 minutes now. So follow me, I'll make you become fishers of men. In this, Jesus not only shows a vision, but he also shows a process. And so vision doesn't just happen, it has to be intentional. In order to get to the place, it doesn't just happen. You don't just wake up one morning and say, oh, my kids are going to be perfect. No, you know what it takes? It's an intentional thing that we train and we teach and we develop and we discipline. And we train and we teach and we discipline. And then the next day, we train, we teach and discipline. And then at 1 minute after that, we train, we teach, we discipline. Have to put punishment in there once in a while so that discipline really takes on. We don't punish for the fun of it, but we punish only when things come to a place that, hey, if they keep going in this direction, it's gonna create real problems. So we say, nope, we're not doing that anymore, right? So we train, we teach discipline, and that's what happens when we talk about vision. I'll tell you something. And me talking about this, I do enjoy talking about it, but it also becomes almost very institutional, very classroom, can become very classroomy. I don't want it to be that way. In fact, what my prayer is Lord, captivate our hearts. Captivate our hearts, not so much with the process and the words, but captivate our hearts. Because if he'll captivate our hearts, if he captivate our hearts, then what's important to him becomes important to us. What breaks his heart breaks our heart. That's what I want more than anything. But we talk about the process. So in July of 2011, I was sitting about where Deborah's sitting, actually. And I really felt like the Lord began to put something in my heart in regards to destiny. And this was the statement. Destiny is the place to be. Now, you can say that, and that kind of comes across a little arrogantly. I get that. That's probably why the Lord gave it to me. I have to work on that every once in a while. Well, most of the time. Destiny is the place to be. And what does that mean and how? And so as I began to meditate on that, you if you've been around a while, you've already begun to recognize some of this. But destiny is a place to be. And out of that came the ideas of destiny is a great place to begin. Have you seen our logo? Have you seen sometimes what, and it'll underneath in the bottom, it'll say begin, belong, become, and beyond. because all of those start with B, right? B-E. B. Destiny is a great place to be. What? To begin. Destiny is a great place to belong. Destiny is a great place to become. And then later on, we ended up adding, as we began to talk about the process and how that looked, destiny is a great place to go beyond ourselves. And so, Jesus had a vision for those men that He called. But it would require something out of them. See, I don't know, for some reason sometimes in our mindset, probably not in ours, but everybody else's, for some reason the mindset of Christianity is, well, I say yes to Jesus and then I just wait for the returns. It's like putting my money into the bank and hoping that we'll have some residual at the end of this. And that's not what Christianity is. I thank God that's a part of it, because I am waiting, and I do believe that those things that I've given to Him, that they're going to come with dividends later on. But it's not that I'm just sitting around and I'm watching and just, well, I'm wondering what I do now. No, listen, there is a process. There are things that we have to do because God has called each of us. And so Jesus has a vision that requires something. And we see in Mark 1:17 is that Jesus has a vision. He says, I'm going to make you a fishers of men. But there's a process that they have to go through. See, we've said our vision, the Destiny Center is a New Testament church impacting our community. And just because we can write it out and quote it doesn't mean that vision just happens. It requires that you and me, you and I is the actual, probably the correct grammar there. But you and I come together in work and in cooperation, and that enables us to collectively make an impact. But in order for that to happen, it takes a process. We identify it sometimes as mission, and you start talking about mission and vision and all that stuff. Listen, this is what I want you to get. I want you to fall so in love with Jesus that it doesn't matter what words we say. You're just saying, Pastor, whatever the Lord calls me to do, there's where I'm going. And so the vision is the destiny. So how do we get there? In talking about this yesterday, Riley sent me a slide. I think I sent it to the guys. Well, I got to be careful about saying guys. To the smart one, Amy, and then the guy. I sent this slide that Riley sent over to me. It says, hold the vision, trust the process. So we're going to hold the vision of a New Testament church impacting our community. That's the vision. But in order to get to that vision, there's a process that we have to go through. There's a process that you and I have to work through. It's not going to just happen. And so, when we talk about mission, mission is how we accomplish the vision. So Jesus says this. He says, follow me, and I'll make you become fishers of men. And that's really Mark 1:17. If you want to say for the Destiny Center, that's one of our key verses or foundational verses, because I believe in that we find all of this: begin, belong, become, and beyond. And I'll say this: when we talk about our Christianity, it's not linear. It's not I'm born again, and then there's this straight line along here, and I go to church, and I do some good things, and I give a little bit, and I keep going through here, and then I die, and the pastor comes and buries me. That's kind of the way linear. That's the way a lot of times we look at life linearly or chronologically, correct? But when we start talking about this process, even though there is some element of linear to it, really the way I want you to see this is more of it's like a wheel. It's a wheel. And what happens when a wheel starts here and it's rolling down the road and it gets back to that place? What does it continue to do? It continues to roll, hopefully. If not, then you need to go to the mechanic and have them check out some problems on your car, right? So let me do it this way. Maybe y'all can see it better this way. I don't know, because I'm seeing it this way. So the car's going forward, right? See me, I'm going backwards now, but y'all are going forward. The car is going forward, and that wheel, it gets to the top, it has to continue to go. That's the way that I see this process, is that it's a will. We don't get to the end of it and say, well, I've got to the beyond. Okay, that's awesome. Begin again. And go through the beyond, the begin, the belong, the become, beyond. And then you get to, well, I'm finished. No, you're not. We're going to do it again. And I'm going to go to the begin, the belong, the become, and beyond. I'm finished. No, you're not, because this time you're going to take somebody with you. And so two of you are going, the begin, the belong, become, and beyond. And you go, hey, we're done. Well, now you take two and add two to it. And begin, belong, become, and beyond. And it's a will that continues. It's a process. It doesn't get to the end of it and go, oh, this is it. No, this is and we're going to keep on rolling until the Lord returns. Now, here's the awesome thing about this. And man, I'm not anywhere where I thought I would be. But some people are going to come in at this place. It doesn't have to start at the begin. It may start at the belong. There may be one of the ladies that comes to one of our women's nights, our connection nights, and she gets connected into the church. And she didn't have any idea, but she gets stuck in here because she feels like I can belong here. And in that belong, then that process begins to take place. And maybe she goes back up and is in that begin piece where she didn't know Christ and she's going to come to know Christ. Or maybe she's already there and that belong piece just helps her lead right on into that become piece. And then she recognizes, hey, listen, God didn't just call me, Jesus didn't just call me to just sit. He didn't call me just to rest and relax. He called me to go beyond. He called me to become a fisher of men. Now, when he talked to them about becoming fishers of men, they understood what fishing was. But when we start talking about fishers of men, that's a totally different animal. And so there's a process. Jesus said, follow. And I really recognize that as begin. And I probably could even say it this way as I've kind of sit and struggled and jumped on this and rolled over all this and meditated on it and chewed on it and spit it out and redid it and rewrote it. It could be, that first one could almost be in. Not in begin, but be in. Be in spiritual relationship. Be in relationship with Christ. We talk about around here, we use the word extravagant relationship. Why do we want to have an extravagant relationship? Because I don't know anybody that wants a crummy relationship. Well, I'm going to get married to this gal here and we're just going to have the worst relationship you could ever think about. Nobody says that. I'm going to have just the worst kids in the world. Nobody says that. Well, I hope when I grow up, my son's a bank robber and a da-da-da and all these. Nobody thinks those things. We want the extravagant. We want the best for them. And so when we start talking about an extravagant relationship, it's that begin piece that we have an extravagant relationship. We are being in an extravagant relationship with Christ. Why? Because there's no other relationship more important than that. That's the strongest and most important decision you'll ever make, is whether or not you'll follow Christ. He says follow. And who's he? He says to follow me, which is that belong piece. They're in relationship. They're in community. We talk about community around here a lot of times. And we talk about it in several different aspects. We talk about it as connection in our men's ministries. Those are community. Those are small groups. We talk about here, and just at the end of this month, we're going to be beginning our fall semester of community groups. Listen, be involved. Well, I don't like them. Hey, you old nasty thing. I'm telling you, there's a part of the process. Well, I can. It's too hard. Man, we make it so easy for you. We almost spoon feed you with this stuff. But it's still too hard. Come on and grow up. I'm smiling now. I'm not mad. I love you. I'm talking to those people out there in bed still. Watching. Like, who's this crazy guy? No, but belong. And get this. He says, follow me and I'll make you become. He says, this is what Jesus says. He says, I will make you. Do you get that? He says, I will make you. I'm going to create in you. I'm going to teach you how. I'm going to show you how to become a fisher of men. And fisher of men, we just recognize as that whole beyond ourselves. See, but we have to be involved in the process. Well, Pastor God, I don't want to. You got to be involved in all parts of the process. We can't pick and choose. Listen, Christianity is not a buffet. And we got to get that mentality out of our mind. A consumer, but I'm going to go. I like this. Well, I like this. I don't like it when Pastor Scott preaches like that. Oh, but I like it when Sean sings like that. No, listen. You get the whole package, all of it or not. Christianity is the same way. We can't say, well, I'm going to pick and choose. It's all in. It's all in. Mark Batterson, in his book, All In, he wrote this. He says, most people in churches think they are following Jesus, but I'm not so sure. They may think they're following Jesus, but the reality is this. They have invited Jesus to follow them. Too many times I want Jesus to follow me, to serve my purposes, to do my will, but I want you to join me in saying, God, I want you to revive my life, and I want to follow you. Help me get out of the way, navigate my life into following your will. Follow me. Follow me. Now we start talking about a few processes here. Part of that process, Jesus says, I will build my church. Jesus says, I will build my church. But he uses several processes in that. One of those we see in Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4, he says, he has given some apostles, prophets, preachers, teachers, evangelists for the equipping of the saints. Part of the process in the church for us, for the Lord to build us, is that he puts in place leadership. Jesus says, follow me, because what he was saying, he says, I am, of course he would tell them in John 14:6, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. But now what happens is this fivefold ministry, as we recognize in Ephesians chapter 4, they come in and they lead the church. No, they're not the leaders in the sense of the head. Jesus is the head of the church, but they lead in the authority that Christ has given the fivefold ministry. Why? To equip, to train, to discipline, to challenge the church. Why? Well, if you continue to read that, not only it says to equip the saints for the works of the ministry, but it's so that we come to maturity. We have a difficult time in the church with people leading us. We have such a democratic mindset. And I thank God for democracy. I thank God that it offers us a lot of things. But you know something? The church is not a democracy. That's one of the reasons, in not specifically in our church, I'm just saying church in general, that we have so many problems in the churches because we think it's a democracy. And it's never supposed to be a democracy. It's a theocracy. God's in control. Period. Yeah, but I understand. I do. I understand all the arguments and all that stuff. But even in the U.S., we have such a mindset of democracy. We think that's the way the church should be led. And it's not led that way. It's led from above. And we need men and women that will hear the voice of God and lead us. And so one of the things that happens here is that there's a process. And in that process, it takes a culture change. Have you ever tried to take your family, and we get this in our household every once in a while. Tiffany will go, we need to eat at home more, and we need to eat better. And the rest of us revolt against that. We don't want to eat at home more, and we don't want to eat better. And so there's a culture change that has to take place. And it's difficult when the Indians don't want to mind the chief. Follow me here. I'll be careful. There has to be a culture change. And how do you change the culture? Man, that's difficult. In fact, we see in Mark chapter 11, you don't have to go there. I'll just reference it because I'm going to get back to it because I'm way out of where I thought I would be. But Mark chapter 11, verse 15, is where Jesus comes, chapter 11 is where he comes in triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And then in verse 15, we see him going to the temple and he begins to drive out. You remember that awesome story? Jesus went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry wares through the temple. Then he taught. Get this. And I don't know, that just jumped out to me as I read this. So he comes in and he's just like, oh, and he goes his Incredible Hulk deal, right? And then he goes, you're going to listen to me. It says he began to teach them. Have you ever tried to teach a little kid after you've done something like that? They run. But here's all these guys and women or however it is. And he says, it says he taught them, saying to them, is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of thieves. Okay, I read all of that because that's an awesome part of the story. But look at verse 18. And the scribes and the chief priest heard it and sought how they might destroy him. Culture change. Something has happened. The people that should have been standing and applauding Jesus were the ones saying, how can we kill this guy? There had to be a culture change, and Jesus came and brought a culture change. We'll get into that more next week, and I'll try to get more animated about it. How's that? But see, the process, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes sacrifice. It takes salvation too, but it takes sacrifice. And I'm wanting us to go through the process, not because, listen, I don't have an account in heaven. Every time somebody goes through the process, Jesus gives me a little tally mark. It doesn't happen that way. I told somebody the other day that they were in my office and we were talking about something. I said, hey, listen, whether you do or don't do it, I don't get a bonus if you decide to make the right choice here. They're not going to go, hey, Pastor Scott got another one. Ding, ding, ding. You know, ring the bell. It ain't going to happen. But I'm going to tell you something. Whether you choose to do right or wrong, that's up to you. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to do what's right. You may not like it, but he does. And so, as we go through this process, one of the things we'll start talking a little bit about next week is the culture change. Here's the chief priest and the scribes, and Jesus is coming and doing something that they should have been doing. They should have been running these guys out. They should have been saying, hey, this is wrong the way you're doing this. We shouldn't conduct our lives this way. The temple is not made for this. And yet when he comes in and says no, they begin to try to figure out, how can we kill this guy? There needed to be a culture change. You know what it took really for the church to make a culture change? He didn't go to those yahoos or yahoos. He didn't go to them. Who'd he go? He went to the least. He went to the fishers, the smelly guys that would run people away just because they smelt bad, right? He would go to the people that were probably the least desirable. And he would go to them because he had changed a culture and he would change a world. I'm telling you this morning, if you and I will walk through the process, if we'll follow after him, he'll change the culture of our hearts, and he'll change the culture of your home, and it'll change the culture of our communities. And when we do that, then we'll impact it for the cause and to the glory of Christ. Father, help us in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Let's give the Lord praise. Come on, sing.